Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Intimacy Lab. You know, there's this quiet moment in every woman's life where she sits alone, reflecting, perhaps brushing her hair, folding laundry, or scrolling through memories she thought she buried, when suddenly, without warning, it hits her. You were the man she underestimated. It's a realization that doesn't arrive with fireworks. No, it sneaks in with a whisper, a taste of regret mixed with longing. She remembers your presence, the way you didn't chase approval, the calm in your eyes when she tested your patience, how your boundaries were firm yet kind. And in that instant she feels something sharp and soft all at once. She lost a man of quiet depth, a hive. Al, you man. But what does that really mean? What makes a man's worth so undeniable, yet so easy for a woman to overlook until he's gone? Today, we're not here to gloat or play games. We're here to talk honestly about the subtleties of masculine value, the way you carry yourself, how you hold emotional space, your clarity of purpose, your ability to walk away when needed, all those qualities that don't scream for attention but command respect when they're gone. Let's explore that space together, because that moment when she realizes who you really were can only happen when you truly become that man for yourself. We've all felt it, haven't we? That ache after a relationship ends, when you find yourself wondering, did she ever really see me? Did she ever truly appreciate what I brought into her life? And yet, in time, there's a shift. There's a moment, not for you, but for her, when she begins to look back and realize the man she once held in her arms, the one she thought she could take for granted, was more valuable than she understood. It's not about ego or revenge. It's about a quiet dignity, the kind of dignity that a hive, Aluman, embodies without needing applause. And so today we're going to speak plainly, not about tricks or tactics, but about the inner architecture of a man who commands this kind of respect and realization. A hive, Val, you man, is defined by a deep-rooted sense of self, a groundedness that isn't shaken by validation or rejection. And this isn't bravado, it's not puffing up your chest to seem strong. It's that stillness you carry when you know who you are, what you stand for, and what you will not tolerate. She notices this even when she doesn't consciously name it. Maybe she questioned why you didn't rush to defend yourself during an argument, why you didn't immediately placate her when she withdrew affection, but that was the first hint, your emotional independence. You see, a man who is emotionally independent does not collapse when a woman pulls away. He feels the sting, of course he does. He's human, but he knows his worth is not determined by her mood or approval. And what's so ironic is that in the very moment you refrain from chasing her emotions, you become more magnetic to her memory. Your refusal to beg for her attention quietly registers as self-respect, and it lingers. This isn't easy, because so many men today are conditioned to fix, to pursue, to win approval, even at the cost of their self-esteem. But you, as a man reclaiming your value, learn to sit in the discomfort of her distance without crumbling. You learn to speak with calm conviction when you say, "This is where I stand. If you can meet me here, wonderful. If not, I will not twist myself to fit a version of me that pleases you today, but erodes me tomorrow." And then there's something else she begins to realize. Your purpose was never her, it was you. A man who is driven by his own mission, his own goals, his own rhythm, gives off a scent of autonomy that women find irresistible in hindsight. She may not have articulated it at the time, but she felt it, the difference between being the center of your universe and being invited into it. Have you noticed this subtle but powerful difference? When your entire world revolves around her, you lose the gravitational pull of your own presence. She may enjoy the orbit at first, the attention, the availability, the constant reassurance, but over time it weakens your allure. On the other hand, when you remain rooted in your path, when your mornings begin with your mission, not her moods, she senses it. And whether she understood it then or not, it's later, when she's alone, that it strikes her. You were a man on a journey, and she was welcome to walk beside you, but never to replace you. Destination, these first realizations come quietly. Emotional independence, a sense of purpose, they work together. And when she sits with these memories, a deeper respect begins to grow. Because, while at the time she may have misinterpreted your calm distance as indifference, she now sees that it was the opposite. It was strength, it was integrity, it was you standing firm in your skin without performing or proving. So what does this mean for you now? It means that every time you anchor into your values, you become a man whose absence speaks louder than his presence ever could. You become a man who is remembered, not because you chased affection or begged for attention, but because you held yourself with a quiet, almost sacred respect. And as we sit together in this space today, I invite you to reflect on that. What does your emotional independence look like? How do you orient your life around your own purpose? These are not theoretical questions, they are the daily choices that shape whether you are remembered as a man of value or forgotten as a man of need. Now that we've opened this space and explored these first truths, your emotional independence and your mission-driven life, let's continue this journey deeper into the subtleties of value that she notices too late. And as we keep walking through this conversation together, there's another layer to consider, the way you navigate conflict, tension, and disagreement. This is where a woman often begins to realize, long after you've left her life, that your strength was not just in what you said, but in what you didn't need to say. You see, Val, your man does not argue to dominate. He doesn't escalate to prove a point or weaponize his words to win. He listens carefully, holds space for discomfort, but remains composed, not because he lacks emotion, but because he has mastered it. That composure is disarming, even when it frustrated her in the moment. Maybe she interpreted your stillness as aloofness or emotional distance, but later, when she reflects, she recognizes it as rare maturity. The ability to stay calm in the face of provocation is not a weakness. It's the hallmark of a man who does not fear his own feelings or hers. Have you ever noticed how women sometimes test your limb? It's not out of malice, but out of curiosity. They want to know, can you hold this tension with me? Can you stay rooted while I waver? Can you weather my storm without collapsing or running? In the moment, she might have pushed, provoked, or withdrawn, but the way you handled yourself, without anger, without contempt, without passive aggression, that stays with her. Because what she was really learning, without knowing it, was that your value didn't depend on controlling her or suppressing yourself. You embodied emotional sovereignty. You owned your reactions, your tone, your words, your energy. And here's something else that begins to rise in her memory, the respect you showed her, even in moments of disagreement. She may not have appreciated it at the time, perhaps she even mistook your grace for weakness, but later, as she encounters other men who resort to blame or coldness, she will contrast those experiences with the way you stayed fair, calm, and honest even when the dynamic between you became challenging. That respect and that restraint are part of what makes a man unforgettable. You didn't allow conflict to shape you into someone smaller than you are. You didn't make her emotional volatility your responsibility. You gave her space to feel everything she felt while you stayed grounded in your own dignity. And that's why a woman can miss you profoundly, even when she was the one who left. Because when you behave with dignity in the face of disrespect or distance, you leave an imprint that no short-lived attraction can replace. Then there's your ability to embrace solitude and not just tolerate it, but thrive in it. This is where your value truly becomes undeniable. Oh, hi, Val. Your man is not defined by how many people orbit around him. He's defined by how steady he is when he's alone. Women sense this even when they cannot explain it. You didn't fill your evenings with noise, distractions, or endless validation seeking. You carried yourself with quiet confidence, whether in a room full of friends or in your own company. When a man genuinely enjoys his solitude, he becomes magnetic precisely because he does not need constant company to feel whole. And later, when she looks back, this is what she'll remember, that being in your presence felt like an invitation, not an obligation. You didn't need her to complete you, and in that you created an environment where she could breathe, rest, and feel safe, even when she didn't understand why she felt that way. But the realization of your value only comes fully when she encounters what life is like without you. When she meets men who chase, who argue to win, who crumble under pressure, who flutter space with insecurity or possessiveness, then she begins to piece together the portrait of you, the man she didn't fully appreciate until your absence left her with a stark contrast. And so, this isn't about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about cultivating a relationship with yourself so strong, so steady, that her eventual realization is simply a byproduct of who you've become, not a performance aimed at her attention. We are talking about sovereignty, self-respect, grace under pressure, and the art of allowing a woman to feel the full weight of your value only once you've walked away, not because you wanted her to miss you, but because your very essence commanded remembrance. And so we continue, weaving these threads together, your emotional sovereignty, your grace in conflict, your thriving solitude, into a fabric of masculine value that becomes undeniable in hindsight. As we sit here together, let's linger for a moment in this quiet power that solitude brings. Because what a woman realizes too late is that your peace was never dependent on her. She remembers how you created environments where she could rest, but that peace existed long before she entered your life, and it remained intact even when she left. This is where your high value deepens, in the discipline of your boundaries. You see, a man who knows how to hold a boundary with elegance, not as a wall, but as a clear line of self-respect, leaves an impression that becomes more vivid over time. It's not that you forbade access, but that you knew where your dignity lay, and you never allowed her to trespass it. At first, she might have tested those boundaries, not out of disrespect necessarily, but because human beings test limits where there is intimacy. And when you gently but firmly held your ground, when you didn't abandon yourself just to keep her close, that's where the seeds of respect were planted, whether she could name it then or not. Maybe she didn't appreciate it in the moment. Maybe she even resented it. She wanted you pliable, available, reactive. But much later, she begins to understand that it was precisely your boundaries that made her feel safe, even as she resisted them. And this is what makes the high value man different. He is not hard, rigid, or controlling. His boundaries are like the frame of a house, firm enough to hold structure, but open enough to invite warmth, intimacy, and freedom inside. Women feel this distinction deeply. At the time, she may have misread your boundaries as distance. She may have accused you of being cold or closed off. But in the silence that follows your absence, she replays those moments, and the truth dawns. You were never closed, you were clear. Clarity is rare. Many men mask insecurity with bravado or passivity with agreeability, but you were clear about what you could give and what you would not tolerate. This is not about dominance, this is about self-leadership, and a man who leads himself first will always command respect, even if that respect arrives only after he's gone. You led yourself in ways that shaped not only your relationship with her, but your entire life, how you took care of your health, your time, your focus. You honored your commitments to yourself, the gym, your work, your craft, your financial responsibilities, not because you were trying to impress her, but because this was your standard. This is something she notices only when she no longer benefits from it, your self-mastery. She remembers how you would wake up early to pursue your goals, how you didn't let emotions dictate your discipline, how you kept your promises, not just to her, but to yourself. And now when she encounters other men who say they will but never do, who talk but don't walk, she feels the contrast. She remembers how quietly consistent you were, how you didn't need to announce your goals every day because you were too busy achieving them. That consistency, that quiet discipline, becomes more attractive in hindsight than any words you could have spoken. And it's this reliability, this steadiness, this masculine rootedness that forms the spine of your high value. You see, the moment she realizes you were a high, well, you man is often not one moment at all. It is a slow unfurling, a series of reflections as she compares you to the noise of other men who came after you, and this is what matters most, that your value does not depend on her recognition. It never did. Your value comes from how you choose to show up in your own life. You hold your center, you honor your word, you lead yourself first, and that leaves a memory she cannot shake. So as we keep walking this path together, allow yourself to sink even deeper into this truth. The man she remembers is the man who remembered himself first. And there's another layer that becomes undeniable in her memory, your emotional generosity. This is something subtle yet profound, the way you gave without needing anything back, the way your presence was a gift because you had enough to give, not from a place of scarcity, but from abundance. A high value man gives not because he is desperate for love or approval, but because love flows naturally when he feels full within himself. You didn't smother her, you didn't overextend, and you didn't perform affection like a transaction. Your love was an offering, not a negotiation. She may not have realized this at the time because in the early stages of a relationship, it's easy to take such emotional abundance for granted. But later, when she encounters men who are needy, men who expect immediate returns on every act of kindness, men who use affection as a tool for control, she begins to recognize how refreshing and rare your generosity truly was. You were stable enough within yourself to give from overflow, not from depletion, and that's a powerful energy a woman doesn't forget, even long after you've gone. And perhaps most importantly, you gave her freedom, true freedom. You never needed to trap her, control her, or limit her expression in order to feel secure. When she wanted space, you granted it without resentment. When she sought her independence, you encouraged it without guilt. At the time, she might have interpreted this freedom as indifference, as if your lack of possessiveness meant you didn't care. But later she understands you cared deeply, you simply cared without clinging. You created a dynamic where she could breathe, where she could be her full self without fearing you would collapse under the weight of her individuality. This is where your value speaks volumes. You never made her responsible for your emotions. You loved her deeply but refused to lose yourself in her drama, her crises, or her emotional volatility. You stood beside her, never beneath her moods or above her needs, but equal and autonomous. This balance, love without need, freedom without detachment, is rare. And it's only when she no longer has access to that dynamic that she begins to understand its worth. It's the absence of your calm that makes the noise of other men seem so loud, the absence of your grace that makes other men's reactions seem so reactive, the absence of your stability that makes other men's insecurities feel so heavy, and this realization for her is bittersweet. It arrives in quiet moments, sometimes when she's in the arms of someone else, wondering why it doesn't feel the same, why his presence feels like pressure when yours felt like peace. You did not demand loyalty, you inspired it. You did not ask for respect, you embodied it. You did not seek to control her, you empowered her to feel free within the relationship, trusting that you would remain whole whether she stayed or walked away. And this is why your absence is felt so deeply, because it reminds her of a standard she may not have even known she valued at the time. So what you need to understand, and what we are uncovering together, is that this realization she's having is not about a single gesture or a single conversation. It's about the cumulative weight of how you lived, how you carried yourself, how you loved without losing yourself. This is the moment she begins to see that what she thought was ordinary was in fact extraordinary. And it didn't happen because you told her you were a high value man. It happened because you simply became one and lived as one. And so here we are, standing at the quiet heart of it all, the moment when she realizes you were a high value man. But you see, this moment is not always cinematic. There is no dramatic text at midnight, no confession under the rain, no grand gesture asking you back. More often, it's something private, something she will never tell you, something she will carry quietly in the folds of her memory. It might be a simple moment. She's lying in bed restless, turning over old conversations in her mind. Or she's out with someone new, feeling an emptiness she can't quite name, because the connection lacks that steady, grounded quality she once had with you. Or maybe she's alone, realizing how she mistook your calm for coldness, your independence for disinterest, your generosity for naivety. But here's the beautiful, even bittersweet truth. By the time she realizes it, you're no longer the same man she left. You've grown, you've deepened, you've continued to evolve, not because you wanted to prove something to her, but because you've made a sacred commitment to yourself. That's the essence of the high-value man. He doesn't pause his becoming, hoping someone will catch up. He keeps walking. He keeps building. He keeps honoring the quiet rituals of his own life, his health, his purpose, his friendships, his passions. His self-respect is not an accessory he puts on when someone's watching. It's woven into the fabric of who he is. And when she remembers you, what she's really remembering is how she felt in your presence. The ease, the respect, the space to breathe, the challenge to rise. She remembers feeling like she was with a man who didn't need her, but deeply valued having her by his side. And so, dear listener, if you are here today wondering if she will ever realize what she lost, I invite you to turn that gaze inward. Ask yourself, am I living in a way that honors who I am, whether or not she sees it? Because ultimately, the moment of realization belongs to her, but the work of becoming belongs to you. Do you know what makes you magnetic, unforgettable, worthy of respect? It's not that you stand waiting for her to see your worth. It's that you are already living as a man who sees it himself, and when you do, your presence becomes a gift and your absence a lesson. So as we close this conversation today, I want to remind you of something tender, something powerful. You were never meant to live for her realization. You were meant to live for your own. And when you do, when you stand in the full dignity of your own masculinity, you become the kind of man who is remembered not because you chased, but because you led yourself first. Thank you for being here with me today in this intimate space. If this touched you, if it spoke to something you are living or reflecting on, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Share your thoughts, your story, your questions. And if you found value here, please like this video and subscribe to the Intimacy Lab, because together we're exploring what it means to love and live with depth at any stage of life. Here's to your becoming, and to all the beautiful, quiet moments of recognition along the way.